let you know when we are ready. All right. YouTube says we are live, which
Awesome.
means we are ready to get going. Welcome, everybody, to the Ask an Accountant podcast, where we demystify accounting by simply asking your pressing questions from the industry's best and brightest. My name's Tony Wilson, your host, quirky friend, and total accounting nerd. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Steve Libhart. He's the owner and proprietor at Numbers Matter, which is a Colorado-based bookkeeping and accounting firm that specializes in providing bookkeeping services to law firms and their unique need for trust accounting. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored. Thank you.
We are super, super excited to have you on, especially you, Steve. And there's a reason why I'm super excited about today and interviewing you. And that is because, like me, you also have the heart of an educator. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm on the faculty at the Colorado Bar Association, have been since 2010, and I'm very honored to be able to teach attorneys basic law firm accounting and trust accounting so that they get off on the right foot. I've been teaching their beginner classes since 2010 and some specific trust accounting classes as well.
That's super awesome. Well, so how did that all come about? Like, how did you get, was it an invitation? Did you kind of go seeking that out? Like, how did that come about?
Well, I have a good friend who's an attorney, and I used to own a day spa that I sold for this really incredible profit way back in 2002. And he was my attorney for my business. And I had an interest in going into law firm accounting at that point in time. And he just introduced me to somebody at the Bar Association. And she kept an eye on me as I was developing in the law firm side. And when the time was right, she invited me to come down and teach a class, and it took off from there.
That is so cool. What a great, great opportunity. And I think that really speaks to also who you are as a professional, right? Like, not everybody just gets invited to the bar association at your state, right?
Correct. I'm so honored to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I love those people. I love it when I go and teach a class, and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months later, somebody will reach out and they'll say, I was either at your class or I saw your webinar, and I need help with my trust accounting. I'm really embarrassed. I'm afraid. And I'm like, okay, let's just stop all that.
Hmm.
And I jump in and we start teaching them, and it's just a blast. I love it.
Oh,
It's my passion.
yeah. Well, and that's just like you can just tell, like, for those of you guys listening, when Steve and I hopped on a call, you can just tell when you have a conversation with Steve, it's just like you're just at ease and you feel like you're not going to say something stupid because, like, he's just an easy person to talk to. And that's what it is to be a good teacher, right? Like, you have to have that personality.
Absolutely. I love it. It's just so much fun to teach people and to see their businesses blossom and grow because of as a result of that.
Hmm.
The best thing for me is to be able to turn them loose,
Hmm.
teach them, get their confidence in there. If they retain my company to do their books, great. If not, then I check in on them every quarter, once a year, whatever we set up, and we see where they are. And I get lots of referrals that way. I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you are you're doing a little bit of that teaching, but you've also been doing accounting, bookkeeping, this kind of stuff. You've been doing this for a while, haven't you?
Been doing it for a while. I started way, way back in my younger years for Westin Hotels and Resorts, and ended up in the accounting division for the company. And I was really blessed in that I got to go around and help open new hotels and close hotels. And I worked in some really premier properties, some nice resorts, and lived in great cities, and loved that. And then when I decided to come home to Colorado, I decided to get into the day spa business because it was at its bell curve at that point.
Hmm.
Back in the mid 90s, there was not a day spa on every corner like there is now.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And it was Nevada Day Spa.
Hmm.
And we grew that spa to a huge, huge business, and then sold it for a nice profit.
Hmm.
And then that's when I moved over to the day spa or to the legal industry. But in the day spa industry, I was the business side of our business, and my partner was the creative side, and we complemented each other very well. And that's where I kind of started my passion for teaching, because we would do um, seminars for women, on how to do their makeup and things like that. And we'd bring them into our day spa and have wine and hors d'oeuvres and all those sorts of things. And our team would teach them how to do that. And then we would just feed them right into our business. It was great. It
Oh,
was a
that's
great model.
great. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
super cool. That's super cool. And so you had been doing that kind of business side. Were you doing like books while you were doing that too, or?
absolutely.
Okay.
I was the marketing and the books.
Oh,
And
cool.
and we were a multi-million-dollar day spa, so it was a big job.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, we had 30, I think when we finally finished it up, we had about 34, 35 employees. And we were right in the middle of downtown Denver, and it was very prosperous. It was a great business. So I got to learn that kind of accounting, which was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, through my attorney friend, I got fed into the legal industry, and here I am, and I will not leave
Interesting.
this. This is
Yeah.
my passion. Love
That's
it.
that's super cool. And so, speaking of your specialization in this industry, it's a very unique niche to have for sure.
It is.
And for those of you guys watching, as I'm learning from Steve, I'm like, there's stuff that I didn't even know. I'm a CPA, guys, and I don't even know some of the stuff that he's talking about. So, without further ado, Steve, I've got some questions for you
Sure,
because
sure.
because I need help demystifying accounting a little bit more. So I need your help with this.
All
Sound
right.
good? Okay. All
Sounds
right.
good.
My first question for you. What is unique about accounting for law firms?
The laws in each state, sometimes in each county within each state. Um, Attorneys have to every year do continuing legal education to keep their license intact. And there are trust account regulations. As an example, some states will require that you keep a copy front and back of every check that every client writes to you for your trust account. Other states don't require that, but they may have a requirement for how long you have to keep the records electronically. The client agreements come into play quite often. Let's say an attorney's doing a flat fee and it's for $10,000 and they're working through different stages of the case for you. There's the initial intake and you guess that maybe it's going to be a $10,000 job, and then you're filing motions with the court, and then you're responding to motions from the opposing counsel and all those sorts of things. And you stair step when you earn the trust money. And so we become involved in that. There are three-way reconciliations that happen every month between the bank, the liability account on the books, and whatever billing system the attorney happens to be using. So there's a lot of moving pieces in it, and there's a lot of different types of law. As an example, a corporate attorney might earn that $10,000 in the first month. A civil rights attorney might take years to earn their retainer. A family law or an immigration law firm kind of goes through it a little bit quicker. So there's all different kinds of law and how they handle the trust money. I have found with personal injury firms, they're so excited that they finally settled for their client in this car accident or whatever it is, that they immediately want to take the trust money and start dispersing it. And I have to put the brakes on and say, you need to contact your banker, make sure that this $1 million really is good and available to use. And you need to sit tight for 5 or 10 days while we do that before we start dispersing funds and things like that. And we have to keep it in balance every day.
Yeah,
Every
right.
day.
Yeah. So talk to me about like piggybacking off of that, like what happens if you aren't careful with how you're dealing with your trust accounting and anything trust related, I guess, as a lawyer.
A lawyer can be disbarred for mishandling the trust account. As an example, they can't have a debit card tied to their trust account.
Wow.
They can't use it for their personal money. In other words, if they're short on rent this month, they can't go borrow it from the trust account and pay their rent, because then they're not protecting the client's trust money in the trust bank account. There's a lot of rules and regulations in each state and each county. Like I said, that several of the municipalities and counties that have certain requirements for trust account administration. So they have to be very, very, very careful with it, and they can be disbarred. Wow. And I have actually worked with a couple of different attorneys where I've gone in and done audits, and they were, at that step of being ready to be disbarred, and we had to go in and audit and clean it up. I had one attorney that I had over 4,000 trust transactions that spanned almost a 10-year period. And we had to go back and find out when was the last time they really were in balance.
Oh my
And it's
goodness.
not as simple as just waving a wand. You have to get all the old bank statements and documents and all those sorts of things. And it's a big project.
Wow. That
So
that sounds like it could
if
be a
they're
nightmare.
disbarred, it is. And they can be disbarred for as much as a couple of pennies. I mean, it's
Seriously.
very, very strict.
Wow.
Now, the cool side is
Hmm.
in most states, and in Colorado, we call it COLTAF, the Colorado Legal Trust Account Fund,
Hmm.
they earn interest. Okay. And that's to the tune of millions of dollars in interest every year. All the banks pay that interest out to this Colorado Legal Trust Account Fund. And then based on the population of the counties in Colorado, they get a piece of that pie to give to people who can't afford legal representation.
Oh, cool.
How cool is that?
Seriously though, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. But you, as a client, can also say, let's say you have $1 million settlement coming in and it has to sit in the trust account.
Hmm.
You can say to the attorney, I want to earn the interest on that. I don't want Coltaf to get it. And so then the attorney has to set up a separate interest bearing trust account at the bank to protect just your $1 million and its interest. So there's a lot of moving pieces with trust accounting in law firms and when things happen and how they happen
Hmm.
and as much as attorneys know, they generally are not at 100% comfort level with their trust accounting,
Hmm.
and that's where we come in.
You know, it's interesting, Steve, as you're talking about that, the thing that goes through my mind is, as a way to maybe hopefully demystify a little bit about the accounting space is accountants are also very tapped into the legal scene, right? Like obviously we're talking about law firms here, but it also stands to reason, regardless of the industry you're in, there is a degree of comfortability and like awareness of the laws and the regulations. And that's one of the things that accountants and bookkeepers bring to the table.
Absolutely, and it's one of the banes of our business as well is, sometimes we have to rein the client in and say, no, you really can't do this,
Hmm.
or you need to think about doing it this other way or whatever. We're the gatekeepers for them.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones that protect their money, that help them see where their business is going, what their key performance indicators are, how they can be tweaked, all those sorts of things. And it's a crime if we don't share that with our clients.
Yeah, that is so great. So I do have somewhat of a similar question.
Okay.
Specifically, what's it like working with lawyers? And with that, like, what would you say is unique from a customer service perspective working with lawyers?
Lawyers are my favorite people, obviously. When I was a little boy, I had an aunt who said, "You're going to be a Philadelphia lawyer because you never shut up." And I love the relationship that I have with my lawyers. They are very busy, very passionate about what they do.
Hmm.
And working with attorneys, sometimes they don't know when to turn that off.
Hmm.
That I'm not the client that they're working with, or I'm not the opposing counsel, like when I'm saying, no, you can't do it this way with your trust account. But I like the challenge of finding the way to communicate with each of them individually and what makes them tick.
Hmm.
And I like making them feel safe with their bookkeeping and accounting.
Hmm.
Um, they know what they want when they want it,
Hmm.
and they're used to working around the clock because they have deadlines for all the motions and things like that that they're filing. Let's say, as an example, they file a motion to appear in a court on your behalf. Then there's so many days that the opposing counsel by law has to respond to that appearance. And then there's so many days after that for you to respond back to their response. And it goes on and on through the whole case. So they're always really on and they're working lots of hours. And so I try to be very efficient with them. I stay up with their bank feeds every single day so I know what's going on. And I communicate with them a lot. I meet with all of my clients a minimum of once a month by Zoom,
Hmm.
or I send them a Loom video depending on what they want. And working with them, you just have to find out what appeals to them, what makes them happy, and they all become friends. I
Hmm.
love them.
That's so cool. A couple of things that were coming to my mind as you were sharing that. One is that there's a certain amount of like time sensitivity that comes with this
Correct.
industry. Maybe, I mean, I think to some extent every business you're going to serve, you have to be mindful, about time
Right.
sensitive things, but extra much so when you're talking with lawyers. Another thing that you had said was working in an environment where these people, they know what they want, right? They're very articulate about that as well. So there's a
Very
certain
to the point.
right and straight to the point, right? And there's a
Yep.
certain amount of you have to, I guess you have to be able to work with that well. And I even just love how you frame it, because Steve, and maybe there's other listeners that are out there right now, and they're thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, I would pull my hair out if I was working with
It's not
lawyers.
for everybody.
Right? But this is where it's like great working with somebody like you, because like your approach, even in how you look at a conversation like that, is you are looking forward to finding ways to work with the difficulties and the complexities of that, and you do it in a positive manner. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like one of my attorneys the other day, love her. Just love this woman. She was on TV here in Denver
Oh.
on a case that she was working on, and I yelled out to my partner right away. I'm like, come here, you got to see it's her. She's on TV. And so I texted her right away. This is the customer service side. I texted her. I'm like, I saw you on TV. You look great. And she texted back. She's like, how was my hair? But I like to get to that point with all my
That's
clients. Let's have
amazing.
fun. Let's enjoy it because
Hmm.
they're very passionate about what they do, and so am I. So
That's so cool.
vicariously, I get to be an attorney vicariously. I
Yeah.
love it.
That's right. And that is, you say that, and honestly, like that is one of the funnest things about being an accountant, is that like
Yeah.
even if we're not the ones like actually doing the coding and software development, or doing the law firm, doing the stuff for the law firm, like we get to kind of sit in tandem with them, and we get to be like super intimately acquainted with the business, and I would agree with
That's
that.
the best part of it all, no matter what niche that you're in.
Hmm.
I always tell people, please find a niche and stay in that niche because you will become the specialist there. You can't be, one size fits all, in
Hmm.
my opinion. A flower shop, a hotel, a restaurant, a lawyer. I mean, it's just too hard. But you find your niche, become the expert in it, get the passion for it, and it'll just take off.
Hmm.
The clients love it.
Yeah.
Because you learn from all of your clients too. Every single one of my clients is different.
Hmm.
But the other day, I had one of them asking me for some best practices on a certain subject in their law firm. And I immediately thought about one of my other clients who had just been through this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, try this, look at this software, think of this, think of that. And they're like, how do you know that? And I'm like, because I work with so many law firms. I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
It's
A
really
law
cool. And
firm wizard. I know these
yeah,
things.
and you can finish working on one and hop to the next one, and it's a whole different world.
Hmm. That is so cool. I love that. I love that. Okay, I did prep you right before we hopped on here, but I didn't prep you way before for this question. But Steve, do you do taxes?
No,
Emphatically, no.
no,
Not your
no.
thing.
I prepare all the work up to the tax level. But what I do in that process, and I insist on this when I sign a contract with a new client, a new attorney client, I have to be introduced to the CPA. I have to have the CPA buy into the tax preparer CPA buy into reviewing the books at least on a quarterly basis.
Hmm.
I have to have an open door to them and permission to talk to them. There's none of this second person, third party thing going on. It's all direct communication. And
Yeah.
guess what? The clients love that.
Oh yeah, I
They'll
imagine.
introduce me and they'll say, go, you're free. We're done. We're not going to pay attention to this. And then between the CPA and I, we have things come up that a client will ask a question and I'll go, okay, I don't quite feel comfortable answering this, but I'm going to get on the phone with your CPA and we'll both get back with you. And we make it happen. So behind
That's
the
so
scenes,
cool.
they know they've got a good group of people working for them that
Oh.
have a good relationship. And guess what? The CPAs and I refer business to each
Oh
other
yeah,
then.
totally. Because I know plenty of CPAs who are not interested in doing, the actual tactics and the bookkeeping aspect of things. So I'm sure there's a huge benefit. And what you're saying there too, I mean, I think it gets back to the whole customer service aspect. Now, I think probably every industry would benefit from this type of relationship, but probably extra so when you're talking about working with law firms. Again, they don't have the time to be handling all of these different vendors. If they could have that one person that they trust, somebody who they know is reliable, who can communicate effectively and coordinate effectively, that very well might be their bookkeeper.
Right, right. And between the CPA and I, we can come up with suggestions for, when I'm working on the financial reports and KPIs, I might ring up the CPA and say, hey, what are you doing with your other attorneys? What are you seeing?
Hmm.
Help me out with this one percentage here that I can communicate to my client and so on and so forth. I have a couple of firms where the partners all have separate CPAs.
Hmm.
So that's like a three-ring circus
Yeah.
trying to keep everybody talking and on the same page. And that's a lot of fun coordinating that.
Yeah.
So, but you learn from everybody.
Hmm. That's it. That's it. See, here it is, guys. The educator's heart right there. To be an educator, you have a disposition of like always wanting to learn and being eager to learn.
Learn.
I love
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Steve. I love that. No, you had said something about KPIs, so I have a question, a follow up question on that.
Okay.
So, and maybe this is somewhat related, but what are some of the most pressing bookkeeping, accounting, finance challenges that civil rights law firms, personal injury attorneys, corporate real estate attorneys are currently facing?
With their KPIs and their numbers,
Could be KPIs, could be literally anything that's accounting, bookkeeping, finance related.
labor costs are huge, especially with the pandemic and its different cycles that it's gone through and the big quit, where people are just not returning. I got contacted by a law firm recently who owns a building. Their law firm is in a building and they can't keep their employees. The employees won't come back. They all want to work remotely. And so I had to take a look at their KPIs, their rent to gross revenue, their phone bills, all of their expenses and show them what their KPIs are. And we're working on a process of downsizing the law firm and maybe renting out to somebody else and seeing what the rental income can do for them. But we can't get there until we know what all the KPIs are.
Hmm.
Labor cost is one of them. Um, their client costs
Hmm.
are different for all different kinds of law firms. A personal injury law firm might have a lot more of hard and soft client costs that they're passing on to the client or not that they need to keep track of as compared to a corporate attorney.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know, the personal injury attorney is going to have filing fees, they're going to have medical records, police records, all those sorts of things that go into that type of case. A corporate attorney might have a few filing fees on your behalf, but nothing else.
Hmm.
So the KPIs are a little bit different for each type of law firm, and so we try to tap into that as well and help
Interesting.
them massage those. And we can tell them, this KPI is showing that you're not collecting all these client expenses.
Hmm.
You need to tighten that up. What are you doing? Is there a gap in your procedures in your law firm where you're not actually billing these to the client for some reason and recovering them? So there's a lot of things that we can unearth and learn as we
Interesting.
go along.
Well, and that's just it. It's like unless you are tapped into what those numbers are, unless you have clarity on what the KPIs are for your business, you're not going to know to ask some of those questions, right?
Correct. Correct. In another group I belong to, at the Legal Law Lab, and we meet every Friday,
Mm.
two very dear ladies, Sarah Prevost and Linda Artisani, head up the Law Lab, and it's just for people like me. We're all a bunch of crazy law firm bookkeepers in there. And we were talking about KPIs recently with um, the paralegals
Hmm.
and their productivity
Oh.
and how COVID had an effect on that. And, um, you know, when we see that labor cost go up, we're like, okay, is this, one example I'll use with a client is this a shared paralegal or is this paralegal focused just to one attorney?
Oh,
And
sure.
that'll tell me a lot there. And
Hmm.
then I start looking at the KPIs and it's like, well, what kind of case were you working on
Hmm.
when this KPI really went out of whack?
Hmm.
And what is that paralegal doing and what can we do to tighten that back down and make it
To manage your business better, right?
yeah,
Because that's like
yeah,
one thing, as common folks, I'm sure plenty of people who are going to be watching this, they might not necessarily be, lawyers or in that space. We look at a lawyer and you don't just inherently assume like, oh yeah, they are a business owner, but like at the end of the day, they are, right? And what you're talking about here is let's give meaningful information, KPIs, so that they can manage. They can tell the paralegal, or they can manage how the paralegal is like working in their business, so that they can drive better results in their business.
exactly. And what's so funny, that saying the cobbler's children have no shoes. attorneys are continually, like especially corporate attorneys, are telling their clients how to run their businesses.
Hmm.
Think of this, try that. But they're not always able to focus on their own business.
Hmm.
And that's what we're here for. It's in the old days, we didn't have time to do the things we get to do now with
Hmm.
like KPIs and things like that. We were data entry people.
Yeah.
But all the technology that has come along in the last several years, I went from pre-technology to this. I'm an old QuickBooks desktop user since 1994. Now I'm finally on the online version the
The
last several
cloud.
years, and they don't always know how to run their own business,
Hmm.
and they're afraid to. And
Hmm.
that's where we can make a difference, and it's all about customer service.
Yeah, that is so great. And Steve, you touch on this point, but I think as technology advances, and this is for all you listeners out there, for as technology has advanced, one thing that's been really cool in the accounting and bookkeeping space is that we are moving away from being data entry specialists to being business advisors, right? To be there with you in the trenches to help
Correct.
you manage and run your business better. So, working with a person like Steve, last week we got to talk with, no, a couple weeks ago we got to talk with Susan. And it's that same thing. It's like, this is your partner in the business that's going to be able to give you better insights so you can run your business better.
And what's so cool is we're not in the business.
Mm-hmm.
We're objectively
Yep.
outside of it looking in. And so
That's
we're
right.
not into all the office drama and driving there and doing all those things. We can just really focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that is so great. And I feel like we kind of already answered this, but I might as well just ask the last question anyway. But how does working with a bookkeeper who specializes in law firm accounting ultimately drive an attorney or partner to become a better business owner?
They lose their fear of the
Mm.
numbers.
Hmm.
They lose their fear of what is my trust account doing. It's not midnight and I'm laying in bed thinking about, oh God, is my trust account in balance? I've got somebody watching that for me.
Hmm.
And then, that word trust again, they build the trust in us. They know that we've got their back. In my case, I'm so blessed because I teach it as well.
Hmm.
And so they have a certain level of confidence when they come to me and they know I'm going to follow through. And they also know that I'm not going to mess around though as well. And I do have my very serious side when I'm working on their books. And when I say no, I mean no. That's when I get to be dad.
Yeah. Crack the up a little. It's funny when you say
Yeah.
that. I'm like, I literally cannot imagine what that Steve looks like in my mind. I just can't imagine that.
Well, I've had a few times where I'll pick up the phone and I'll call and they'll say, absolutely not.
That's
I'm
not
not
happening.
budging. We're not doing this. I refuse to make this trust entry for you.
Hmm.
You've got to sit tight until the funds clear. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. Or you did this wrong. You got to fix it.
Hmm.
Don't be embarrassed with me. I'm on your side.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's one of the many ways that bookkeepers, you in particular, can help a lawyer, an attorney, become a better business owner, which is really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Which is really
Yeah.
great.
They don't want all the fluff and they don't want to hear yes. They want to hear how are we getting from A to B?
Mm-hmm. That's
What's
right.
the most efficient way to do it? What's the legal way to protect my law firm? And
Mm-hmm.
let's have fun on the way.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time today. This has been so much fun. I've loved talking with you. I knew I
Ditto.
would.
Thank you. Thank you. I've
Yeah.
loved this.
Yeah. This has been
I mean,
this.
I could go for 4 more hours.
Hey, maybe we're just gonna have to have you. We'll have a reprise episode. We'll have you back on the
There we
show.
go. There we go.
I think that would
That
be
works.
great. Well, Steve, I want to give you an opportunity to speak to a very specific audience that may or may not be listening. Hopefully, they are listening. But I want you to envision there is this attorney who has been working in another law firm and they just have this burning desire. They're like, I'm ready to go and launch my own firm. I'm ready to go do this out on my own. What words of wisdom do you have for that person?
My words of wisdom for those people, and I get them all the time, that's the newbies, is don't think that you can do everything.
Hmm.
And I'll use the love Intuit. I'm not going to bash Intuit. I love Intuit. I love QuickBooks Online. But we see those commercials on TV where the veterinarian is driving down the road and going to see a client and they hop out of their truck and they pull their phone up and they do their books and then they're off. That's not how it works. It's not a one size fits all. And so if we can teach them right away what proper accounting is and proper bookkeeping and why we're working towards the KPIs. And quite often they don't come to us until they've already tried it on their own and then they've made such a big mess. And then they're having audits on their tax returns and things like that, or they're in trouble with their trust account. The regulatory agencies after them for a reason or another. Um, if the one thing I can share is whether you're ready to have a bookkeeper or an accountant right off the bat or not, interview the people, talk to them, have them in your back pocket and ready, because we will come in at some point in time. You'll need us at some point in time, especially if you grow the business to a successful one.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a couple things. I'm hearing stay connected, because
Yep.
even if you don't need somebody right now, you will likely need somebody eventually. And then number
Yep.
two, don't try to take it all on your own, because
Exactly.
that's what having partners like Steve and other specialists in this area, that's what having partners is all about.
It's why we have plumbers, why we have airline pilots, why we have accountants, why we have CPAs, why, ask me, do I do taxes? No, I'm not the specialist in that. I'm going to give that to the person who knows how to do it.
That's good. So. That is good. Well, awesome. Steve, where can people go to connect with you if they wanted to have follow-up questions?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I have a website, numbersmatterllc.com. Those are 3 good ways to find me out there.
Perfect. And I will, for everybody who's watching, I will update the description down below. I've not done this very much before, so I don't know. I think it's down below the YouTube description, where you can go and find Steve. I've also put his email address in there too, so if you want to shoot him an email to have some follow-up questions, you definitely can do that. Well, Steve, yet again, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. And for all of you who've been listening, I hope you found value in our episode today. If you have any pressing accounting questions that you would like future guests to answer, you can go ahead and email me at tony@acquip.com. That's ACCQUIP.com. Also, if you are an accounting professional or you know one who would be interested in coming on this show, please reach out to me as well. I want to have as many people as possible to join me on this fun and exciting show about accounting. Well, with that, I want to thank you again, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, keep calm and keep your clothes on.
Thank you.